Also, Natalee's uncle Paul Reynolds takes us behind the scenes. Private investigator Ernie Rizzo is still pondering a trip to Aruba. And international attorney Rahul Manchanda is here with a few lessons on Dutch law. All right, Rahul, what is the process for, and I'm saying getting an indictment, I don't quite know what the procedure is in Aruba, but what is the procedure? Do you have a grand jury body? Is it a judge that does this? What sort of evidence, what sort of probable cause standards to hold somebody over to trial?
Right, well, obviously the standard of evidence goes up every time you move into a situation like this, but I think this is sort of karmic payback right now. The defense is engaged in very, very dirty tactics, in my opinion. They've questioned the turning over the files to the FBI. They've actually gone on the attack aggressively against the prosecution.
The best defense is a good offense.
Right, but yeah. I think that the prosecution has up until now been very, very patient with the defense and allowed them to get away with these things. But I think right now is the time that they're going to show them exactly that they mean business. The Calpa brothers have, without a doubt, given misstatements periodically since the beginning. There's about 23 lies on record.
What's the mechanism, though, of actually taking these three to trial? And is it a grand jury? Is it an indictment as we would know it? How do you do this?
Well, first, initially, as we all know, it was one judge, then it's three judges, then it's, if they lose in front of the three judges, then it's The Hague. So it's a much more serious thing. But right now, they're going to be in front of three judges right now. And the motion obviously was accepted at this point, so they're going to move forward with that. Right. I think absolutely the fact that these two brothers have been out of jail now for about a month has given the defense certainly a lot of leverage. I think that it was a very big mistake to release these two brothers to the wild.
Really, because a lot of people would say that, gee, you'd like them to start talking, and the way they start talking is give them a little rope, let them out there.
Not at all. I think that if they have any intelligence, they're probably going to stay silent about it. But I think what they should have done is focus more on the interrogation of these two boys while they're in custody. I mean, nothing gets them to be, more loose-lipped than being in custody. When they're free and they can consult with their attorneys, that's when you see evidence and stories being refined, stories being tailor-made. When they're in jail and they're separated, that's when you see inconsistencies, and that's when you see people starting to get scared and starting to talk. I think it was an absolute error and mistake to release these two brothers, and now that they're rearresting them, it's an admission of failure.
Go ahead.
Catherine, more innocent people get convicted and later convictions reversed because of this kind of interrogation. 100 and some people were left off of death row in the last 10 years because of forced confessions. You can't hold a kid, especially, for hours and days and months and pounding into them. You got to say this, you got to say that. That is the worst way to take a confession, and most of these confessions later are appealed and are thrown out of court.
But let me add this real quickly, and one is there are problems with forced confessions, but they're not they're not as many as we think. And of all of those people who've gotten off death row, a great deal of that was a result of DNA and not forced confessions. But I'm certainly here at CourtTV, we object very strenuously, and it does happen.
But I mean, there has to be some material evidence, some new material evidence to rearrest somebody, and the standard in Aruban law goes up every single time. So the question is, what do we know now that's so material and that's so new now than we did before? It's very minimal at this point. It's a lot of conjecture, a lot of misstatements, a lot of inconsistencies, but we've had them since the beginning of the case, and I think the only one that's benefited, the only people that have benefited from this release and then rearrest have been the Calpa brothers.
Yeah.
Or some kind of a place that they were excavating at the time, and they had some credible information that her body was at one point there. Now, again, I can't verify that information. It's from memory, but I think that that's the sort of evidence that we need. I mean, it seemed from what Tim was talking about that the body was removed.
That maybe it had been buried or concealed and then removed.
Right, that it was buried there and then it was removed from there. Now, my question is, why hasn't it been talked about? Why hasn't that been investigated? Let me ask both Paul and Jossie. Paul, have you heard anything about that?
We know the report. We know where EquiSearch was looking at the site that where possibly someone could have been buried there, but we don't know for sure that's a fact. It's a possibility. We think the most credible information comes from the boys themselves in the very beginning. Like we said earlier, when you let time go by, stories change, but the story in the very beginning, I think, gives us the most information and gives us the most insight as to what may have occurred, and that's where it shows the extent of the participation that the father had.
I agree with Paul also. I think that what should have been happening since the beginning is that these four individuals should have been interrogated, just day in, day out. A timeline, for example, should have been established. Where were you at 8 o'clock? What happened at 8:01, 8:02, 8:03 p.m. for days? And these stories should have been vetted and gone.
Of course, now we don't know to what extent that may have taken place.
Right,
but
obviously the stories don't match up, and that's I think Paul is correct. That's where the truth would have laid it. And we don't have any physical evidence, but the stories should have been.
If Johan is released on September 9th, can the Aruban government hold on to his passport Because he's obviously, there's not enough to hold him. So can they keep him from leaving the country? Some people say Daddy will have a plane ready to take him.
Absolutely, they can do whatever they want to do. I mean,
even if he's been walked out, he's
sure. They prevented the Calper brothers from leaving, didn't they?
Well, no, I understand they didn't take their passports.
Well,
Calper brothers agreed to stay.
Well, they agreed to stay with a little bit of pressure from the Uruguayan government. I think that there were some things going behind the scenes. I think that if they'd given them the right to leave, they would have left. I think Joran van der Sloot is the main suspect in one of the biggest criminal trials that's going on in the world right now. The Uruguayan government is not going to give them the power to leave the country. They're not going to do that. I don't see that happening. The consulate's not going to accept them. They're not going to leave. There's absolutely no way that's going to happen.
All right, well, it'll be very interesting with the rumors afloat, whether or not indictments going to come down in the next several days. Obviously, we're going to be there. Yossi Mansour, thank you very much. Paul Reynolds, Ernie Rizzo, Rahul Manchanda.